It's a long wow. No, Demetrius Rogers here is the Director of Enterprise Services for the Virginia Information Technology Agency. He is responsible for the oversight and governance of all cloud-based services for the Commonwealth of Virginia. Demetrius joined VITA back in 2016, where he immediately wrote the third-party use policy for allowing for third-party hosted solutions in the Commonwealth. Now, prior to joining VITA, Demetrius had top IT positions in organizations such as WorldCom, AT&T Wireless, and most recently Northrop Grumman. I know him. We all know him up here. Where he served as IT portfolio services manager for the third contract. In his tenure at Northrop Grumman, Demetrius served in various capacities over the years. 10 years. Yeah, he has supported the VITA NG partnership, including the interim program security officer from late 2015 to early 2016. I love it.
He was my boss for a little bit.
There you go. He holds several industry accreditations, including both the CISSP and the CSP. He attended Strayer University, as well as the Booth School of Business, Strategy Development Executive Program. Prides himself in being a strategic thinker with a history of finding and delivering creative technology solutions that enable organizations to better perform and achieve its goals. Most recently, Demetrius drafted the Governor's Executive Order 19 Cloud Service Utilization and Readiness, which is signed by Governor Northam on September 18, 2018.
Kudos to you.
Yeah, good job. So to talk about cloud services oversight, please welcome Demetrius Rogers.
How's everybody doing today? You can hear me, right? I don't need a microphone?
No.
All right, good. I really wasn't prepared to old one, so glad. So, enterprise cloud oversight. When and where does it apply? You'll hear me affectionately refer to this going forward as what I affectionately call ECOS. Some other people in the room probably don't affectionately call it ECOS. It's a sensitive subject in the Commonwealth. What it is. And so, Enterprise Cloud Oversight Service is a standard service that we developed at VITA. It's a service-based approach to do a security assessment process of different cloud providers. It also calls for ongoing monitoring for compliance of any cloud-based services providers. The framework is based on NIST 837, which is a FedRAMP simplified risk management framework. The 4 bullets here that are important are the document, assess, authorize, and monitor. You'll see that if you're a Commonwealth agency, you're familiar with it. If you're not a Commonwealth agency, you may not do this. You may not even do security assessments against cloud providers, which is something that you really should be doing if you're going to allow someone to host your data. You'll be surprised at what we see out there, but I'll touch on some of those things later.
What's FedRAMP?
What's FedRAMP? Are you serious? So, if anybody's not familiar with FedRAMP is a government certified.
You're a heckler.
You're my heckler? Okay. So FedRAMP is a government program for data centers and other platform as a service providers to meet a specific criteria. There's 3 of them. There's FedRAMP low, medium, and high. They're based on the NIST 853 security principles, and based on their FedRAMP certification level, more security controls come in place. But if you want to house federal data, you have to be FedRAMP certified. That's the key thing you remember. So people always ask me when they deal with Commonwealth, if we're FedRAMP certified, do we still have to go through this process? My answer to that question is absolutely yes. Because FedRAMP typically stops at the platform layer. We look at all the way to the application layer. So you'll hear me talk about tonight how our cloud oversight process encompasses SaaS. We use it for SaaS specifically right now. We will apply certain levels of controls to our infrastructure in SaaS, but we do not allow what we call delegated procurement agencies to go out and procure cloud services if it's anything at the infrastructure and platform layer. They have to get through that. They have to get that through. We do not allow delegated procurement for anything other than software as a service because of the management aspect. I'll touch base on The Cloud Security Alliance, CSA. How many people are familiar with CSA? Okay, that's good. That's good. So they're a not-for-profit organization. Their whole mission is to promote the use of best practices for security around cloud consumption. Our ECOS assessment questionnaire is based on the CAIQ. If you're familiar with the CAIQ, then you'll see that you'll know that CAIQ is about 322, 360 questions, something around there. Our questionnaire for the Commonwealth only has about 125. We looked at, hey, what's really applicable to what our security standard is, which is called SEC 525. SEC 525 is for any third-party hosted data, any third-party hosted provider. If they want to house Commonwealth data, they have to be able to meet SEC 525. It's based on this 853 Rev 4, but we do have some Commonwealth-specific items within our SEC 525. Our process follows a specific framework. So, as you know, SaaS is the new buzzword. Everybody uses the term SaaS, and a lot of times it's not accurate, right? So people call things SaaS that are truly not SaaS, right? A great example of that is Adobe will refer to all their products as software as a service because their delivery mechanism is electronic, right? In actuality, most of their products that Adobe refers to as SaaS actually runs locally. Runs on your server, runs on your desktop, whatever it is. It's a subscription-based license, but you're not actually uploading any data to their application system. They do have the Adobe Creative Cloud product, and within their Creative Cloud suite, there's about 4 true SaaS solutions, but they refer to their entire portfolio of services as software as a service. So when they have those types of SaaS solutions, our oversight process doesn't come into play, right? We say there are SaaS solutions that do not require ECOS. And I've had to have this discussion with a lot of different agencies across Commonwealth to say what's truly applicable to these security requirements versus things that are not. And I tell people, I use the example of Gartner, right? Gartner, we're consuming data, right? I'm not responsible for protecting Gartner's data. I just consume information. If we have to upload Commonwealth data into someone else's system, and we expect them to safeguard that information, then our ECOS process applies. So again, it talks about SaaS solutions where Commonwealth data is being stored, transmitted, and processed. If you guys ever have any questions as I go through this, please ask. I will continue to talk until you stop.
So,
yes.
how many entities are certified with Commonwealth of Virginia as
approved? So we have conducted about 189 assessments, and I want to key on a specific point that I just brought up. We do not certify a supplier specifically. We will certify a supplier's application, right? And that's key because if you look at companies like Salesforce, right, they have thousands of applications, right? When we look at the security posture of a specific SaaS solution, we look at that specific solution because the security controls that are required or maybe implemented are different across their suite of offerings. And so a good example I can use is Microsoft Office 365 versus Microsoft Dynamics 365. The security controls in place are different. The capabilities are different, right? The configuration controls are different. So you have to individually assess those different solutions in order to say this is approved or not. Like I have some where we had to document exceptions on Dynamics 365, or I did not have to document exceptions on Office 365. So we don't approve entities, we approve an entity solution specifically. Thank you for asking that question.
How many certified service providers?
So right now, I think out of that we've approved in terms of applications, I want to say we're in excess of probably in excess of 50 or so, 60 or so. 'Cause when I look at the 189 submissions that we've had, keep in mind, the E-Coast process went into effect December of 2016. I joined VITA in July of 2016. First thing they said, handed me with some legislation that said VITA shall develop a process to allow security assessment and oversight of cloud providers. And by the way, you need to have them in front of the Department of Planning and Budget by October 1st. So that was a welcome to VITA, July 7th. So I said, I said October 1st of this year. And they say, yeah. So that was probably the fastest service development. I actually hold the record in the Commonwealth for creating a service framework for the Commonwealth. But it's about 50 or 60, and let me elaborate on that. The reason why it's about 50 or 60, we have more coming every day. Because we have, when I look at the 189, that's across the ones that have been submitted, we have those that are in various processes. Some of them made it all the way through. Some are in a lot of them are in the phase where we typically have, and Chandos can attest to this, we typically have 2 or 3 rounds of conversation with each supplier, right? So what they'll do, we have our assessment questionnaire, they'll fill it out. We have language on a guidance tab that says you need to be able to support your responses with artifacts. A lot of times they don't get with artifacts, right? They'll say, yeah, we have policy access control. Okay, right?
Where's the proof in the
Yeah,
pudding?
show me, right?
So how do you handle that?
Yeah. So we have language that says, please provide supporting artifact, or if I will look at it, my response is, please provide me a supporting artifact. You can either give me a copy of your access control policy, table of contents access control policy. You can show me your ISO 27001 certification. You can give me a copy of your SOC 2 tax law. Right? The ISO 27001 certification will attest to the fact that you actually do have these things, right? So I will take that versus you give me, and that will serve as a subset for all of the proof of the existing policy that you need, incident response, access control, those types of things. I prefer a SOC 2 type 2 because it gives me a little bit more detailed information in terms of other questions. So depending on how I tell them, you can give me a bunch of documentation, or you can give me one of your third-party attestations, and that will help us make it through the process a lot faster. Because if you don't give me the information, then we're gonna go back and forth, right? And it's typically a conversation. And I was having this conversation earlier with some folks who say, "Well, I've done this in 5 other states. Nobody's asked me to do this." I don't care about other states. I care about the Commonwealth of Virginia, right? And the bottom line is, this is the best practice framework. So if you're familiar with CSA, I tell people, especially within the Commonwealth, you'll be familiar with the Cloud Controls Matrix. The Cloud Controls Matrix says, hey, based on the type of data you hold, here's the federal regulatory requirements you need to have in place to meet. And by the way, here's the thing that you should have in place as a CSP. And so I usually point them to that, to say, tell me how you do not have these things, but you're asking me to hold PHI, FTI, PII information. Yes.
Yeah, so you said you approve applications.
Yes, sir.
What happens if you have Amazon or Microsoft Azure, where you have
The platform, our infrastructure.
right?
Yeah. So I don't know if you heard the part that you walked in a little late. So right now, VITA, if you need anything below a software as a service offering, you have to get that through VITA. So it's not what we call delegated procurement. So what we do is we handle the security assessment process at VITA, and before we put it into our service catalog, which we have not introduced platform as a service to agencies as of yet. It's part of the roadmap plan that we will be doing probably within the next 6 months. We'll offer Azure and AWS type services through our service catalog. We don't offer infrastructure service, we offer platform service because we handle everything through our service providers all the way up to patching on the OS, firewall rules, CASB integration. So agencies and the executive, specifically executive branch agencies, they don't have infrastructure. So they get all their services through Vita. That's a mandate.
So then if I have a third party vendor, like, I don't know, that uses Amazon.
AWS.
Right.
Yes, that's a good question. So a lot of software as a service providers, this will come up. A lot of software as a service providers will take their IP and place it on AWS or Azure or Google CMP, right? What we do when we do the assessment of those, there are questions that specifically deal with the infrastructure provider, right? And the physical security things. They'll say, hey, I'm writing on AWS, whether it's Gov Cloud or public cloud. Then they will give us the information around that, and they'll answer those questions as much. And then when it comes to things like access control, there are things that they're still responsible for the software service provider. So a lot of times what will happen is people will put the question there, and guess what they'll do? Every question will be what Amazon or Microsoft does. Guess what I do? Send it back to them. Say, that's good. I know what they do. I'm asking you, what do you do? Because they don't handle your access control. Okay? They stop at the OS level. Anything above the OS level is still your responsibility. And so when you talk to a cloud provider, you have to ensure that they understand where their responsibility starts and stops in terms of their security requirements. Because I'll say, what's your password parameters for the application? What is support? Does it support multi-factor authentication? Do you do application penetration testing? Are you scanning? Are you doing vulnerability scans against your application? Yes, I know AWS is scanning their infrastructure. They're not scanning your application. So where is that information at? Show me where you have a third-party attestation that talks to your security controls. So there's a gap between, yes, they can give me a SOC 2 Type 2 from Amazon. I already have it. But you can give it to me again, it's up to available for the time. However, I know what they do. I don't know what you do. You're the one, the contract is with you. It's not with AWS, right? So these are types of things, the questions that we ask to ensure that we understand how the Commonwealth data is actually being protected. Because if there is an issue, I can't go out to Amazon. The contract's not with them. Unless it's directly through our service catalog, but that's a different conversation. Yes.
What was ECOS again?
Enterprise Cloud Oversight Service.
That's the name for this whole process, right?
That's the name of the process that we use in the company. Yes. No problem. Here we talk about, how is ECOS different. We do focus on data in terms of data sensitivity, the location of it, where it's at, the access of it, what platform it is, supplier viability. They are responsible for reporting. So I've touched on the assessment process. I really haven't touched on our continuing oversight process. So what happens is when we do a security assessment against a supplier and we approve them, or we approve them with original approval. Original approval means I approve them, but agency, we have some identified exceptions or non-compliance items. You need to request a security exception for X, Y, and Z. A good example, the most common security exception that we find, specifically with SaaS solutions, is the Commonwealth has a requirement for inclusive control of encryption keys, right? And that's a very hard requirement for software as a service providers to meet, because they say, I can't allow you access to my encryption keys because then you have access to all of my tenants' data, right? Fair, right? And unless, so we have to say, okay, agency, you will have to request an exception. It doesn't go away. The requirement's still there. The agency has to agree, has to submit to our Commonwealth Security Risk Management team a request for exception. It says, hey, we can't meet the requirement for that. We just typically grant that provided, right? Now, we are looking at putting things in place on the Commonwealth side to address that. Things like a CASB, where we can obfuscate the data. So, that would remove the need for the encryption, because again, read it, right? If they did access the system. So, those types of things. So we typically do grant those exceptions. I don't think there's been one instance. Sometimes we'll have a conversation with the supplier a little bit more and say, well, tell me just to understand how they're doing their encryption. We'll say, you know, are you doing it at the array level? Are you doing storage encryption? Are you doing database level encryption? How are you doing it? So we can understand if an exception is really necessary. But a lot of times, I'll tell you, it is most of the time, at least at the staff there. When we start talking about the platform level, you know, we'll have an agency in place. We'll be able to meet with them. Yes, sir.
So after you've done your assessment and an application has been either approved or contingent approval, how often do you reassess that particular application?
Yeah, so what we do, they go into what we call, if an agency, so we'll do an assessment, and then after the assessment, and I was going down this path, I don't know why I stopped. So, if an agency chooses to use that supplier based on the approval, then they will go into what we call oversight, right? So we have a series of reportings that we require from every cloud service provider, and we have a contract, and that's the most powerful thing that you can have with a cloud service provider, the contract, right? In that contract, we talk about their reporting requirements, we talk about the limitations of liability requirements, we talk about all those things. That every month, every quarter, and annually, they have to give a certain set of data, right? So every month, they have to show us their vulnerability scans. They're doing vulnerability scans. They're doing patch compliance. They have to give me proof of intrusion detection scanning, and they're taking this on a quarterly basis. They have to give me. We have to know where the geographic data, where the data is running. Even if you're running in AWS or Azure, we want to know what region you're running. The reason why that's the case is because the CIO of Virginia is very key on. You know what? If I see an outage for AWS East, how do I know what Commonwealth services are impacted? So if he comes to me and says, I just seen an outage on AWS East, who's running software and service applications that just depend on that cloud? He expects me to know the answer. So we require that reporting every month as well. We also require an annual SOC 2 Type 2 audit. Some suppliers do that. They have their own, others rely on, say, I don't have a SOC 2 Type 2 audit. So we will say, well, you are required to do what we call a gap analysis audit. It's SEC 525, meaning everything that's included in the SOC 2 Type 2 infrastructure provider, we should include the 5 trust principles. If it doesn't, and then we'll say, here's the, you need to do an audit between your SOC 2 Type 2 and SEC 525 gap, what's covered in the SOC 2 and your application. We won't look at the infrastructure, but we're going to do gap analysis between your application and what's covered in that SOC 2 audit. And so that typically runs between $15,000 to $20,000. But we say, or you can do a SOC 2 Type 2 for your application. We would be encouraging them to do that because that will benefit them in the long run versus a SEC 525 gap analysis audit. Because SEC 525 gap analysis audit up to the common. If you do a SOC 2 Type 2 for your application, at the application layer, you can use that for other business. You can show the any other potential customers that you're security aware, that you're taking those steps to ensure that you're protecting their information.
And whose responsibility is to get that SOC 2 Type 2 audit done? The agency or the service provider?
It's a service provider. It's part of our contract. So we had that discussion very early on before the paper was signed.
So this contract you're referring to, is that actually the service level agreement, or is it just,
So we have
or
cloud.
they're
terms
one
and
and the
conditions.
same or not?
I'm sorry.
Are they one and the same, or?
So we have an exhibit, right? So we created an exhibit called our cloud terms and conditions. And within those cloud terms and conditions, we have specific things in there that talks about the various things that we expect from them to do. We also talk about the amount of liability coverage that they need to have. I'm actually having a conversation right now as of yesterday because I have 2 agencies that want to use the same supplier. One agency says I have only a couple thousand records. It's less than 5% of the data is sensitive. So the supplier says $3 million liability coverage is what I'll carry. And that may be sufficient for them. But I have another agency who says, I want to use the application. The type of data they want to put in this software as a service solution is at least how they categorize it. There's a life and safety dependency. It's like health and safety. And I said, so is this accurate? Are you telling me that there's going to be health and safety dependencies upon the supplier, and they said, well, that's how we have it categorized. I said, okay, so guess what? $3 million liability coverage is not gonna cover, right? So I need to know if that's accurate. It's accurate because the agency classified their data. So you need to tell me how you're actually coming to that determination, because else we got a lot of different conversations with suppliers. So listen, you need to increase your liability limitations.
Do they go through the 860 categorization process for all their data?
I don't know how they categorize the data. 'Cause that's CSRM.
There's a data classification process, it's a whole entire form that we go through that we identify all the data types.
They put it in Archer. We use Archer to view it. So that's when I went and looked at in Archer the classification of data, and I saw it was high across the board. High across the board told me that even the health and safety was high. And I said, sometimes they may put things in there inaccurately, and I say, is this what you meant to say? Because I have to make my decisions based on this data.
Right.
So that's where the liability limitations come in, because we have conversations a lot, and says because if they're not willing to go, we'll say you can't use this, or you agency need to go and get additional insurance to cover that breach cost.
What secretary was that agency from?
Safety.
Oh, well, that kind of
What's
makes sense.
yours?
That makes sense.
We also talk about one of the things we do talk about in our contract is a lot of people believe that, oh, I put my stuff in the cloud. I need to talk about data portability in terms of being able to, if I leave that cloud provider to another cloud provider, but they never think about, especially in these software service providers, if that software service provider goes out of business, how do you get your data back? So we have, within the Commonwealth, a data escrow agreement clause that says if you go out of business, the Commonwealth data needs to be able to be accessed by that agency to get our stuff back. And it was one of the things when we were interviewed by the Digital Government magazine, it was something that no other state had thought about. So they ranked Virginia's process as a best practice, because they said, you're dealing with these small people. AWS probably is not going to go out of business. But those small software service providers think, wow, guess what? The contract with AWS is between those two. You have no right to access their data unless you have to negotiate that with the contract. Talk about the mechanism to achieve that. So those are the types of conversations that we have all within our contract to make sure that we understand how to get our data back in the event that you are no longer
Well,
around.
then who owns the data?
We own the data.
Okay, so why wouldn't they make it available to you whether they're going out of business or not?
Well, because AWS doesn't know who you are, right? The contract with, the Commonwealth of Virginia is that agency. So let's do mediation for you. Department of Health is using a software service provider. That software service provider he runs his infrastructure on AWS. Guess what? The AWS contract is between that supplier and AWS, not mediation AWS.
Okay.
So if that supplier goes out of business, Chandler can call up AWS and say, hey, I want to access this customer's data. Because there may be multiple people that
Because AWS has
has
a contract with this.
that supplier. Yes.
Yeah, that's a bad loophole. Very bad gap.
Yes, it is. And so, which is one of the things that we said, hey, we got to make sure we close that gap, at least on the Commonwealth side.
Have you actually had an issue where a software provider's gone under and you had to?
We haven't had that issue yet, but in all of our contracts, we've identified mechanisms we can get our data back, which is why we have that data escrow clause.
Nice.
See how that reads.
Yeah, I'm happy to share a copy with.
Because if somebody shuts the door and there's no money, how do you get it out?
That's why we have to make sure we have it.
And this is also why Commonwealth works with FBI playoff.
So, yeah, because we don't want to be on the news talking about what we can't give somebody the information. So this slide talks about shows the shared security model, right? A lot of people think, hey, if I go to the end of the cloud, specifically, I don't have to do anything. It's all in the cloud provider. You all know it here. That's not true, right? Even if you use the software as a service, which has the least amount of responsibility on you as the cloud customer, you still have some responsibility, right? In terms of your data classification accountability. And actually, what's not up here is they talk about it a little bit. Identity access management. You still have to make sure your access controls are in place for identity access management solutions. They don't typically provide those. Obviously, you're not going to protect your endpoints. You're responsible for that. Data classification accountability is all you. And so I like to show this to people because specifically in the business side, they say, we go to the cloud. I don't need anybody else, right? They do everything else. It's not really accurate, right? So we have to have those discussions a lot. We talk about the different cloud models, the blue infrastructure platform, SaaS. Obviously, your responsibility decreases for a security model as you go up the stack. But I like to show this right next to this slide because this is the one management. This is I said this is about management, right? This slide talks about what do I have to actually manage, and that's different from the shared security model. And so I said, yeah, you're correct. Software as a service, they will manage. They patch everything up to the application. You subscribe, you consume, you make a figure. That's it, right? But that's not the same as the security aspect where you still do have responsibility. And I've had to have those conversations with a lot of folks to help those people understand the difference between what's responsible from a management standpoint in the different cloud service models versus what's required from a management standpoint, a security standpoint in those different service models.
Yes, did you substitute the word manages in there with risk? So on the red line, the side there in the graph, could you substitute the term manage with the word risk?
Oh, could I? I don't know. I don't know if I would. I mean, I understand there did from risk because that indicates to me if I did that, then I would say on premises it would lead one to believe that your premise-based environment has more risk than your fully outsourced. I don't know if I would agree.
You may have less risk,
Yeah.
but you're not going to get rid of all risk.
On the left-hand side where it says on-prem, you own the risk.
Yes.
In the middle, everything that's blue, you own the risk.
I see what you're saying. Chris. So you're saying, hey, this is the amount of risk that we own. This is what we transferred out. Yeah.
Yeah, but even with software as a service, you still have some risk.
You still have some risk, and that goes back to this slide.
Right.
Right. Because you're saying, yeah, I can't do full risk transfer as long as I have any responsibility on me. Right. So that's where that's why it's really important for us to talk about the management aspect and security aspects through different lenses. So when one of the things the first thing we had to do before we created the search model was write the policy, right? So what happened was in December, the legislative session in 2015, VITA was mandated to create a model to allow for Commonwealth executive branch agencies or other entities to consume cloud-based services. Prior to that, the only way you could consume any cloud-based services was a CIO exception. You had to personally plead, write a letter to the Commonwealth CIO, justify why you wanted to be in a non-Commonwealth facility. And so a lot of people will say, well, this is only cloud. And I've had people come to me and say, I'm not a cloud provider. So Sec 525 or ECOS doesn't apply. And the reason why they say they're not a cloud provider, they'll say, because I don't meet this definition of cloud. And I tell them, I don't care. And the reason why I don't care is because I said, Is the data being hosted in a Commonwealth owned or leased facility? Answer that question is, the answer to that question is no. You are subject to Sec 525. You are subject to our cloud oversight process. Whether or not you have the ability to do rapid provisioning, whether or not you have broad network access, whether or not you have elasticity capabilities, that's only interesting, right? I don't look at this definition of cloud when trying to make a determination of whether or not you're suitable to house Commonwealth data. The analogy I like to use, especially with the non-IT folks, I don't know how many people are familiar with that Geico commercial. We're on a Geico commercial where they took the drummer, they shaved him up, put him in a suit, put him behind a desk, and put financial advisor on the door. Right? And then people went in and asked a lot of questions, and they said, "Would you give me your money?" They're like, "He's like, yeah." They said, "Well, you know, he's a drummer, right?" And I equate that to a lot of cloud service providers. And the reason why is because I can tell you that there are a lot of folks who don't perform the necessary activities that they need to perform to be housing your organization's data. It is actually scary. I have gotten off the phone with some folks and I really felt like sending them a mail for consulting service. Right? Because I just spent an hour telling you what you need to do to run your business from a security standpoint. And so it also, and when people say, "Well, why can't I?" And I was giving another presentation earlier today, and somebody asked about social media. I'll touch base on that. They say, "Does social media require ecos?" And I answer no. I said, but if you want to hire somebody to archive social media data, they require ecos. I said, well, why? It's all public information. It's all public to see it. Anybody know why? Really? Not one person. No, integrity.
To maintain the
Right.
process.
Yeah. Because guess what happens? If you archive the governor's social media account, right? And it's some supplier system for archive system. It's not confidential. And if it's available, who cares, right? It goes down, you can't get it. But can you imagine what would happen if somebody hacked that system, modified that post from the governor and said he'd run for president in 6 years?
Or for Trump.
And they said, yeah,
Trump's tweets.
and they said, look what the governor said. Look what this candidate said when he's governor of Virginia. Look, it's right here on social media account. Right? We look at confidentiality, we look at integrity and availability. So when people say to me, Patriots, you're being unreasonable, nothing's sensitive in here. Okay. Maybe not from a confidentiality perspective. Do you need it? Do you care if it's right or not? Does the integrity matter? Does it have to be available when you need it to perform some common function? And if the answer is no to all three, which I've had people tell me no because they don't want the process, I say, well, good. We don't have that conversation. You don't need it. You just told me you don't need it to protect the Commonwealth information. You don't need to perform your business. You don't need to be available, and you don't care if it's right. So guess what? You don't need to spend taxpayer dollars on it. Because you can't make decisions off of that. That actually backfired on the agency one time. They tried to justify getting out of the process. So they got the CIO in the room with me and the agency head, and they started asking these questions. I said, okay. And you know what he told me? I said that. I resent the fact that you're telling me how to spend dollars. Okay. I'm just saying that makes sense. CIO chimed in and said, well, you should. You don't need it. So we look at all those different things in terms of defining where cloud oversight needs to come into play. Because at the end of the day, Commonwealth and its agencies, I tell this to the agency because you're not the one that has to get in front of the camera. If there is a breach in the Commonwealth, it's going to be Nelson Moe, who's the CIO of Commonwealth, or Mike Watson, who's the Chief Information Security Officer of Commonwealth. They have to get in front of the cameras. And we need to ensure that that doesn't happen. It won't happen on my watch. But Lord, like, you know, he's gonna ask me what happened. I don't want to be in a situation where I can't explain that. One more scenario I'll give you. This actually happened. I won't tell you who it happened to. You may be able to figure it out by the storm. There was an event. Somebody said they didn't want to go through the process and they chose this is a website type of scenario, right? So websites are public, right? We have a classification even on your websites, right? What are you going to put on there? You have to classify that data. It says things not sensitive, even availability. Well, there was an event where that happened, a large weather event, and during this weather event, drove a lot of traffic to this site. Governor says, we need to take action. And if you need to know what you need to do, you need to go to this site. Tell you where you need to go. That's what happened. Website was down. Why was the website down? Because they were running it on a supplier who couldn't handle the load. We pulled the data in Archer, see how they classify everything. Everything was low. But we have health and safety now at risk because of this decision. So guess what? I had the pleasure of working to take that evening into the next day and move it somewhere else to a supplier that put it behind the CDN, gave it number of resources there to a supplier that has the elasticity capabilities. And we got the site back up because it was health and safety. Normally, VITA would not get involved in those types of things. That's an agency website. But in this case, we had the governor of Virginia telling people for life and safety reasons where they need to check this particular place to know where to go. They couldn't do it. So VITA had to get involved, which is why we look at everything and we ask questions. I'm not the most popular person in the Commonwealth, I can tell you.
I can attest to that.
But at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that the business can be secure and function. The agency, its data protected. Sometimes even from the agency, so you'll thank me later. Right? But sometimes they'll try to escalate. They'll go to the secretary and talk to the governor's office. Go to the CIO. Teacher said, no. All right. Write it up. Here it is. Somebody wants to assume the risk. So, again, the policy talks about what VITA was mandated to do was create a capability to evaluate service providers to ensure that they can follow our security standards, because the Commonwealth always had, and I ain't say always, at least as long as I can remember, you had to, in any contract, you had to state in that contract that you were capable of meeting the Commonwealth security standards. At the time it was called Sec 501, it evolved into Sec 525. Well, Sec 525 became a new standard for non-premise-based systems a couple years ago. And all the suppliers were saying, yeah, we can do it. We can do it. What this process allows us to do is actually validate that. And so one of the things, all the prior exceptions of the Commonwealth, CIO had granted, sent out letters to all those agencies saying, yes, I know you had an exception to go do this, but now they need to follow through this process. Because we need to evaluate them. We may not say you have to move off of them right now, but we find a significant issue. We need to be aware of what that is. We need to know what risk we're accepting. We can't bury our heads in the sand like an ostrich, pretend they don't exist. Because if there was something to happen, we need to say we did our due diligence. We took due care to ensure that whatever data was out there hosted by someone else, and they were charged with protecting, they had the ability to do so. They were following our standards. And so You had contracts that happened before, and people said, yeah, we do this. And then when I start asking questions, as they start going through this process, they said, well, we don't do that. Contract says, where? Right here. I'll pull it up. This was I actually had the conversation last week. I pulled the contract the day that contract was signed. The contract administrator, who I will give a lot of credit to, they actually kept the email that they said, because the supplier wanted to say we will comply as of how it states as of that date. So we kept the email that with the contract. It said, here's what 6501 states the day you signed. The requirement I was asking about that said they didn't do was part of the requirement that was in the security standard as of that day. So you just told me you've never been compliant. That's what you just admitted to. So we work with them to address that problem. Any questions? Because I think that's the last of my slides. Yes.
So how does a supplier, a software provider, get into that pipeline? Is it they want to be recognized by Virginia or one of the state agencies to use that, or do you just go out fishing for it?
No, they have to be sponsored by another agency. So we've had suppliers come to us and say, I want to get on your approved list. Okay, who wants to use your service? What agency? I don't have anybody. Well, no, I mean, the line, I would never be able to achieve complete the ones that actual agencies want to use if I just allow compliers to come sign up with us. So right now, our provision is you have to be sponsored. We have had some suppliers we've said no to. I mean, it's very few. We've had a couple walk away, say, I can't do this. Okay? Let me know when you can. We'll be here.
Is there like an RFP, I mean, will an agency identify a couple of suppliers that offer?
We have that too, yes,
services
part
in
of-
RFP?
Yes, we do. We run across different scenarios, right? So we have scenarios where an agency will conduct an RFP and they will submit a couple suppliers through the process and we'll evaluate those. And how the assessment process works is once we approve you, you're approved for 12 months, regardless whether our agency uses you or not. You have a 1-year approval period. So even if they go through our RFP and you get approved through the RFP process, you will show on our approval list at least for a year if we approve. And so if they use you, then as long as they're on their Oversight, they will still never approve. That's how it works. If no one uses you during that year, then you fall off that list because we don't know your security posture. Which is why they third party applications on a daily basis because they could have made changes. I'll tell you the worst story we had was I had a situation where a utility supplier, I won't say who it was. The supplier went through the assessment process. I asked them questions. They sent me an email and said, we don't have to have a meeting. They want to get their attorney on the phone. Just a security conversation. I can't have an attorney on the phone. Besides, Commonwealth, I can't get on the phone with an attorney without having someone from the OAG's office. If you want to bring your lawyer on the phone, then you get attorney general's office. I can't have that conversation with an attorney. But it raised red flags. And so I went back there and said, hey, you should look at other suppliers. No, people do this. Okay. They wanted to force it through, We still couldn't come to agreement. This process went on for a couple of months. Finally, the supplier backed away. About a week later, after the draft happened, they were sued by the federal government for lying about their compliance. They didn't have things in control to even be certified. And the things that they said they were, and they had to pay over $150 million. And guess what? All people that were on that system have to move off because they don't meet the compliance that they said they did. And those people, even now, that company is being sued again by all their tenants. And The agency students that told me thank you, right? Because if we was they argued me up and down. They actually went to the secretary and said, "This is ridiculous. VITA is being unreasonable." No, they won't agree. They won't. It's
Keep on being unreasonable.
huh?
Keep on being unreasonable. My tax dollars are supporting you. I'm behind you.
Thank you. And so they, it came out and it was published, and we said, "Oh, I felt totally vindicated at that point." But that's the worst story I've run across. Others are just conversations. It's like I was talking to Channels earlier. Some people say, "I don't want to do this because other states aren't doing it," but I can tell you other states are starting to follow suit. Because I point them to, hey, this is not a VITA framework we're following. We're following the CSA framework. You should really be doing it, right? This is the standardized methodology for assessing cloud service providers. If you're not doing it, you gotta ask yourself, why aren't you requiring this? This makes sense. And I had a conversation with the state of New York. I had a conversation with people in Georgia. I had a conversation with Texas. Other states are starting to do it, especially now that Virginia was recognized by the state's government as being the best practice for assessing. Right? Because nobody was really putting the hard screws to the people saying. But Virginia is a little different because I had the ability to say, we're going to change the procurement law that says if it's third party hosted, you have a $0 delegated authority. For that, agencies had up to $250,000 delegated authority to buy anything they wanted. And when I came to VITA in 2016, and I had Charles Ragnus, I said, here's what we need to change. Because guess what? Cloud provider, the dollar value makes no difference. I know people will pay you to get your data. So as you know, you can subscribe to one subscriber and they load your data. It's $100 a month, or they charge you $5 a year, whatever they charge you. Dollar value is irrelevant when it comes to securing our data. So we changed it to say $0 procurement authority for anything that's eligible to the cloud. And what that does is forces the agency to come to VITA to buy anything that's hosted in the cloud. And so some of them have tried to get around it. Some of them have. I have a little story about that. But it could be considered illegal procurement. Procurement people can go to jail for that every day. So when I go speak at the procurement summit, I say, you need to understand what your IT people are telling you. Because when the state inspector general comes to my office, I'm going to say, this is what they were supposed to do. I don't know how they got that over there. I didn't. I actually had this happen. I didn't realize state inspector general people have guns. They carry guns. Yeah, I didn't know that. So I had to meet with them because somebody did illegal procurement. And they wanted to know. In their mind, they said, well, why would somebody do that? Why would you attempt to skirt the law? What are you getting from the supplier that makes you break the law to sign a contract? Those are the types of questions that people have to ask. Because this is law. So Virginia is a little bit different because we do have that capacity to do that. A lot of states, they still don't have that level of authority where the CIO can say, you can't go do certain things. But that's the only way. When I went to NASCIO mid-year this year, to talk with other state CIOs, it was, if you want to get control of it, you're going to have to encourage somebody in your administration to guarantee that level of authority if you're going to have any level of responsibility around it. So, any other questions for me?
So this one comes from, in addition to everybody that's in the room, we also present the meetings through Zoom. So from our Zoom attendees, the question is, what are the biggest issues that you see with various state agencies with respect to cloud service? So what are the issues that you think
With the agencies? I think the biggest issue.
Somebody is laughing.
I think the biggest issue I see with the agencies is that, and this is uncommon, it's unfortunate, but it's true. I think the agencies will look and blame VITA versus the supplier, right? They don't say, VITA's in the way. I can't go do what I want to do. And I said, when, really, it's the common public, right?
It happens with all security.
Yeah, I know, right? And it does. And, we're stopping the business if you don't believe that. But, and the other thing is that they say it takes too long. But I have data that shows, look, I haven't, good example, I had something for 7 days. Send it back to the agency with my third-party questions. Suppliers get back to, on average, I'm tracking the metrics. On average, it takes supplier 30 days to respond. On average, 30 days. Then they'll say, it takes too long. I say, listen, you're asked for delegated procurement. You need to be pressing your supplier to respond. So when we ask the question, it shouldn't take a month. It shouldn't take 45 days for them to get back to me. And then when I get it, you say, I opened this request 2 months ago. He's laughing because he knows it happened. 2 months ago, I started this process, and it's not done yet. I had it for 7 days. I just got it back. Not fact, the suppliers had it for 45 days, 50 days. So I have to have that conversation a lot. And that's the biggest agency impediment. And also, the other thing is people still believe that unless it's confidential, it should not have to go through this process. Right? Giving you examples of why that's not true. Right? They'll say it's not sensitive, and I'd say not sensitive from a confidentiality perspective, and I may agree with that. However, the other aspects may come into play. So that's the biggest challenge I have. Biggest challenge we have with the agencies. Any other questions?
So do you see any changes in the future for e-coms?
I do see some changes. We're revisiting the cost of the cloud oversight service. And actually, it will be one of the biggest complaints. Now, that goes to his other question. The biggest complaint was the agencies was how much it costs, right? They said, I have to pay Vita $10,000 a year. It's $900 a month right now to do this. And it's going to go down. I can't say how much it's going to go down. It's a significant amount. Because I can't say it until the Department of Planning and Budget finalizes the budget for fiscal year. 8 people in here, so I can't tell you. I'll get out, I'll get in trouble. So, but it's gonna go down because the more people that consume this service, the lower the cost will be. We will reduce the cost every year because we have fixed costs. Because really, it's all labor, right? It's all labor costs for us, and we have to make sure because part of the legislative mandate to VITA was that this model that we just talked about had to be self-funded, right? We had budget appropriation for the first 2 years, get it up and going. After that, it's self-funded. So, meaning it's funded through the agencies, right? The people that consume cloud services. So, we have to make sure that my costs are covered, right? My staff is covered. Because it's self-funded. I have other services in Vita, so I'm spread across multiple services. But the things that I do for the cloud is that budget, that cost center has to be self-funded. So people always say, how much money are you making?
Not enough.
Not enough. I said, that money doesn't come to me. I tell them, it's for the pay the business, right?
So people who complain about the cost should actually invest into it and use it. That way it gets lower cost.
Absolutely. Because the APA, one of the things that we did, we met with the APA, and the APA wanted to know, hey, if what are you doing? When I go into an audit, I want to make sure that I understand what VITA is responsible for if they're paying for the service versus what the agency is responsible for, right? Because they still have some level of responsibility. A good example is reviewing their access logs, right? Me reviewing your agency's access logs doesn't do any good because I don't know who's supposed to be getting in, who's not supposed to be getting in. I don't know who's people, right? You need to look at that. You still have to do that. That's a requirement that you have to do. Validate are the people who's accessing the application supposed to be accessing the application. So we have a document we work with the APA that says, yes, here's what we will do. Here's what agencies still have responsibility for. But guess what? It's a lot lower, right? So you can. It's almost a risk transference. In the instance, because you can say, hey, VITA does that for me. I don't have to worry about that. Go talk, if there's a problem with the APA, go talk to VITA, right? we have people that are non-executive branch agencies who don't have to use VITA, but the third party policy says that you're still supposed to do the things that ECOS requires. You just don't have to use us to do it. The executive branch, you have to use us to do it. And so one non-executive branch agency just reached out to me a week ago because they got dinged by the APA because they were not doing some of the things they were supposed to do. And they said, you should talk to VITA on how they do that. And they got called me and said, hey, I got the APA finding and I need to fix it. And you tell me. So you can choose to use us if you want to, but you don't have to if you're not executive branch. If you're legislative, judicial, or higher ed, you don't have to. But it's a risk transference discussion at that point. Yes, sir.
Beatrice, I just want to say congratulations on that executive order.
Thank you.
Draft that, that's awesome.
Thank you.
I mean, outside of, crafting a piece of legislation, that's as, as high up as you can get.
Yeah, I actually framed that.
One of the things that I saw along with the announcement of that was there was a mention of a company that would assess, company agency do an assessment if they wanted to move their stuff to the cloud. I'm just curious, is that assessment, is that a tabletop exercise or is that done via some sort of tool or some combination of tools?
So the assessment, and then we didn't actually mention the company. We talked about the cloud assessment readiness aspect.
Right.
And the assessment readiness talks about the ability for that application or workload to run in the cloud environment. Right. And I specifically didn't mention the specific cloud deployment model for that because I didn't want everybody to automatically say, governor said I gotta go to AWS. No, that's not what it says. It's not what it says, right? The assessment readiness, what it really is intended to do, Dave, is to talk about, to force agencies, as you all know, or people that work on the VITA program here, know that the Commonwealth has had an historically bad time enforcing modernization, right? There's some legacy applications in the Commonwealth that need to be updated. They can't run in a resource pool elastic environment. And we're like, we need to be able to enforce these changes. So the assessment readiness orders within the executive order forces agencies to not only start looking and reporting on the readiness of their applications to run in a cloud type environment, but also puts urge on them to say, I need to start putting in my strategic plans that I submit annually and requesting funding from DPB to update these workloads. Because we should not be having conversations in 2018 about it taking us 3 or 4 years to get out of a data center. That's a ridiculous conversation to have at this point in time, right? So it's forcing them to go through a readiness assessment. And we use the different, the 6 R's for that to say, are you going to re-architect, re-platform, retain, repurchase, rehost? Yes. So there's there is a process that they have to go through. We created a questionnaire. We sent it out. It's in Archer. They have to complete it. That's really a tabletop exercise. However, we are, and there's other providers. Agencies can use a subcontractor, do a statement of work with a supplier to come in and assess their workload, their expertise to do it. But what I tell people is,
some of the trust but verify sort of thing.
yes, what I tell people is, this is not a optimization exercise. Meaning, I'm not telling you to go out and determine how you need to optimize your workload to better run on AWS, right? Because you can do a lift and shift. It may cost you more because you're not effectively utilizing those resources. I'm more concerned about the ability to run in a cloud environment versus the architecting to be optimized in a cloud environment. Because if I can run you in my private cloud, we can have the optimization conversation later to run on a public cloud.
That helps a little cost.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate it. No problem.
Anyone else have any other questions? No? Demetrius, thank you very much.